Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Wherever you are in the world, a very warm welcome to you to Leadership Insights with me, Prashant. आप सबको मेरा प्यार भरा नमस्कार. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for the amazing support that you're giving this show and the amazing feedback that I am getting on how to make things better. So, thank you so much for partnering with me in making this show and actually taking it to the levels that I wanted to go and making this vision of leadership become a reality. So thank you so much for that. Now, continuing our journey in bringing in different perspectives of leadership, different understandings, different aspects of leadership, we have another interesting guest with us today. And what we are talking about today is very interesting and something that I very much am attached to. And I'm curious and I want to know more about it. Now, there are a lot of conversations in the leadership circles where we talk about these Gen X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and the various names that we have given them. And the conversations mostly happen that there are a lot of generations that are working together now. Workplaces have become very dynamic where there are baby boomers, X, Y, Z, Z, and many more generations that are working together. So they're bringing in a lot of challenges for leadership. Now, when I specifically talk about the generation Z, there are a lot of conversations that are happening of this generation saying that these are the generations which are difficult to lead. Leaders are facing challenges saying that this generation is very impatient. There's a lot that they want from a workplace, but the workplace is not able to supply or apply that. Then there are those leaders who say that these are the generations that are actually pushing the work to a very different level. They're pushing leaders out of their comfort zones and they're actually making people live in excellence rather than in mediocrity. A lot of leaders talk about Gen Z saying that they want instant gratification. They want things like this. They're not patient to wait for results. And there are leaders who are saying it's Gen Z who is bringing in new ideas of how we can innovate in a workplace and how more can be done with less. So there are a lot of contrasting conversations that happen around Gen Z. So I thought that we should talk to somebody from Gen Z, someone who can bring their perspectives forward rather than listening to the tales of people. I should talk to these people and understand कि क्या चल रहा है आपके दिमाग में, what's actually happening with that generation. So while I was doing my research online to find out who can I speak to, where can I get maximum value, I found out one person. This person was already adding so much value out there and he's just 24 years old. And at the age of 24, he started an initiative which I personally believe and wish becomes something amazing because he is looking to help the generations from his own experiences and learnings. And he's actually working with people from 18 to 24, 25 years old and helping them with their challenges. और मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि when I was 24, I had no clarity where my life is going. I was at complete loss. And this person has clarity of where he's going and he's helping others get that clarity. Now, that impressed me a lot. And I'm somebody who likes to serve and give. And I could connect to his value system where he's also looking to serve and give. And that's why I connected with him. And I'm grateful to him that he agreed to be on this show. So, without any further delay and talking much, let us get our guest with us so that we can start this conversation. So, please welcome Vikram Vij. Hi,
Hi,
Vikram. A
Prashant.
very good morning to you.
Hi, Prashant. Good morning. And thank you so much for having me on here. I think this has been one of my biggest wins. I'm helping others to win with my initiative, but I think this is one of the biggest wins I have had in the past 4 months. Coming out on this platform and interacting with you, I think I should thank you. I must thank you for the opportunity that you've given me, and I think this is going to be a very exciting conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
Super, and thank you for being kind. And I understand where you're coming from as a 24-year-old. That might be the feeling that you're having, but trust me, from our eyes of people who have been 24 like 15 years back, we are very proud of what you're doing, and it's my honor that I can talk to you and understand what's going on in your mind and what does your generation think. So thank you for being here once again.
That
Now,
means
what impressed, great. So, what impressed me the most, Vikram, about you is your initiative. A couple of things that were running in my mind. I'll be very honest. I looked at your profile and I'm like, this is a 24-year-old who has just started working a while back. He has been a director of international services for Rotaract. He's been somebody who's been a vice president. And having the conversation with you, I also understood that you actually had an option of being a president, but you did not take it up for various reasons because you had to balance things in your life as well. Now, when I look at it, I'm like, यार 24 साल का बंदा है. How does he have that much clarity? And Where does this energy, this enthusiasm come from at that age where people are lost? They don't know what's happening with their lives. They're running behind a lot of materialistic things in life. But you are somebody who has a mission. You are somebody who has found a purpose for yourself. Now, this is what I would want to talk about first, because that's my personal curiosity. So, Vikram, what is this initiative Win With Me? How did it start? Why did it start?
Prashant, first on the onset, I'd like to really thank you again for this upliftment of the initiative that you've really given. I think your words have added value to the initiative, and I think after this, it goes on to be more of a responsibility rather than just enjoying the umbrella of sitting under that initiative with my name. So, Prashant, I'll just go back a little while. I'll talk about how the things have been and how I eventually ended up starting something of my own,
Sure.
and this probably will take you to a perspective or a mindset or the psychology of an 18-year-old boy who was just out of his 12th standard and had a good grade in the 12th and now was expected to enter into the real life, as we call it, and it's the college life and everything. Now I enter college and I see that there is something missing. There is something that is lacking in people like me who have already who like always been into that protective space of their parents, and they've not really moved out of that space, and
Hmm.
they've not really explored themselves. And you see them because there are people out there at the age of 18 right now who are doing things that you can't even imagine. The generation that we're talking about right now, that holds the power to change the world, and I literally mean it, because I have my younger brother. When I see and when I talk to him and when I compare him, though I don't like comparisons between any two individuals, but when I just see how the perspectives have shifted from us being 18 and they being 18 now, I
Hmm.
think that is something that needs to be talked about. Coming to the 18-year-old, there are two roads I think any 18-year boy or girl takes every time, and that's a crossroad. That's a dilemma that everybody faces. That's the phase wherein you either look after that glamorous thing, you are caught up behind those uh, folks, girls or boys or chaps who probably would want to take the road which would mean that they are going towards that glamour, show off, and everything. And they probably would indulge into all those wrong deeds, as we term it in the Indian terminology. The other road is the one that is, I think, the less taken one, because nobody actually guides you about what is good or what is bad, right? And
Hmm.
it is at that stage where your parents also set you free in the world, because they also know that if you keep them protected now, they would not be able to take up the challenges of life in future. So that's a very dicey situation, a dicey age, a dicey stage in everybody's life, wherein they are trying to figure out how do they fit into the nitty gritty of the world, how do they fit into the complexity of the modern world. So that was a point wherein I weighed like 130-35 kgs,
Oh.
and the point that I'm trying to tell you right now is that it was very, very, very easy for me to live that kind of a life. I come from a Punjabi family. We are big time foodies. My parents have always seen me as a goal mole kid who doesn't want to lose weight and wants to enjoy life eating stuff. But there is a time in your life where you would want to take up some kind of a challenge, where you'll want to challenge your own self and see how much you can push your own limits, right? And when you decide doing that, there is just one thing that you need, and that is somebody who has already done that, or somebody or someone who has already been through that, who can hold your hand, who can hold your finger, or who can just guide you a little bit and can put you on the right track so that you don't lose your vision.
Hmm.
Right. So I, like a normal boy, I just joined a gym and fell prey to a bad guidance. And that is where I realized that more than anything else in life, how important it is for us to choose the right mentors, and how important it is for us to look up to the right people. How do we decide who we look up to? How do we decide who we actually seek guidance from? Right? So I was on the bed for good 1.5 months, and I thought of doing exploring this kind of a thing, because that kind of reacted into my head, and that kind of stuck in my head, that I have to do something about it because I am not getting any assistance from the outside world. Now I
Why
started to
why were why were you in hospital? Sorry, I didn't get that.
no, not in hospital. I was just on the bed because
Okay, all right.
it yeah, nah, that is that all was fine, but it was just
Okay,
that something reacted, and I was put
okay.
on onto that space, and at that moment I realized that how important it is for us to change, like take the charge of our own lives, and how important it is for me right now to look after what I want to do later, and probably lead from the front. So I started surfing on YouTube. I just went out and looked forward to meeting different people. I met a lot of people. I started exploring my own self. I read about it. I learned. And at the end, I realized that no amount of knowledge or no amount of skill can replace the practical experience that you can get from somebody there who has already been there, as I already talked about. Now I had this vision in my head at that point of time, and I also worked as a personal trainer for some of my clients at that point of time. And I never really went in for numbers. I just went for the quality aspect, so that I can hold them, so that I can tell them what mistakes I have made and they can't, so that I can save them from not entering into that kind of a vicious circle. Now the vision of doing something, uh, guiding people or guiding the young generation who is at
Hmm.
that point wherein if they take a wrong step, they are altogether into a big blunder, right? That vision was already in place. So once I entered into this corporate space, once I completed my MBA, one of my vision, besides setting a good or becoming a good leader in future, as we will talk about in the coming time in this conversation, one of the aspects was that I would want to uplift, or I would want to help as many people as I can on this journey along with me. That's
Hmm.
one thing that has always stuck by me. So when I was here, I was talking to a lot of people, and being in the talent acquisition space, I tell you, that has turned out to be a big blessing for me. I get to meet a lot of a lot of people, and being into the campus recruitment space, that is even more better, because you kind of get to see the things on the grassroots level. How are the little students of 18, 19, 20, 21 years of age, how are they thinking, how are they perceiving the world? And why I say this is important, because that shapes up our expectations and our mind for the generations to come. They actually teach us a lot. So this was one of the vision that was there in the head. And then all my mentors all throughout my life, they have just proven one fact for me, that it is very important for us to understand that it is just one moment and a few sincere words coming from somebody, they can make a huge impact in somebody's life. And that has
Hmm.
stuck with me. So I look forward to inspire, and then
Nice.
connect, and then interact with people, so that I can help them eliminate the challenges that they're facing. Pretty much this was the idea behind starting all of it. I never thought that I will get so much trust and belief in me, and people will actually reach out to me for help. And now that I am 4 months into it, I realize this is something that a lot of us would have to do in future. Now I'm not demeaning any way that we charge for it, because it's one of the things that you are doing it for free and you are doing it for paid. I think I have nothing against the people who charge for the services. It's just that at this point of time, I'm not doing it because I'm not giving them anything in specific. I'm not providing one service that I'm charging from them. In case they need some help, I'll always suggest them to seek help from other mentors, because I know how it is important for anybody at this point of time that they seek that kind of a guidance from them. I think that's pretty much it to suffice. I can speak on and on, but I think this is the vision that I had in my head when I started with this initiative.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Vikram. So, Vikram, when I hear you right now, what's becoming clear in my mind, or a word that is getting stuck in my mind, is mentorship. Now, and another word that's getting stuck in my mind is confusion. Now, why do I say this? You spoke about people who are from the generation who are like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, where we are transitioning from one space, one domain, one zone of our life to a very different domain. We're becoming adults, and we're gaining more control of our decisions, our life, and the decisions that we take at that point of time have a large impact on how
Right.
our life will shape up in the future, or it seems so at that point of time. I'll also say that it seems so at that point of time, because from experience, I'll tell you it's not true. You will get a lot of opportunities to reshape and reroute your life. But when you are 17, 18, that's not how you see life. It seems that जो भी मैं अब करूंगा उस वही मेरी जिंदगी डिसाइड करेगा, which brings in a lot of pressure on parents and lot of pressure on the child as well, on the kids at that age as well. So the point that you were trying to make when you also referred to your brother, you referred to that generation, that it's just a 6 years gap, but you see they are so different from what you were when you were at 18. But one thing that you could relate to, which still remains the same, is that part of confusion, and is that point of intersection between those two crossroads where you can go left or right, where you can go towards a direction which will take you to a world which is materialistic, which is unreal, and or you can choose a path of growth and alignment and movement forward and to serve others as well. These are the two choices that you have. Now
Absolutely.
you, because of the experience that you have when you went for, when you decided that you want to lose some weight, you tried to take some methods which did not serve you well. That probably was an alarming thing in your mind, saying that ki boss, ऐसे रास्ते चूज करना सही नहीं है. I need to choose a path where somebody has already done what I am trying to get to or achieve, so I need a mentor, right? Now, being a coach, couple of things that are running in my mind again, because I'm trying to reflect on your journey, is, and this is everybody who is between that 18 to 24, is to understand that this confusion is normal. Everybody is confused at that age, so you're not going through something that nobody else is going through, and you're like, ये मेरी अकेले की journey है. जो लोग आपको sorted भी लग रहे हैं ना, you should feel like, yeah, he's 18 and he's sorted. Trust me, inside their head, they're going through a lot of confusion. So it's very normal to be confused. So just accept that कि मैं भी इस हजारों लाखों में से एक हूं जो confused हूं. It's okay. But after you accept that confusion, it's important to move to that space of clarity, and that is where, as Vikram said, mentors come into picture. So find someone who has already taken the journey forward and take help from them, and that is where Win with V comes into place, Vikram. So this initiative that you have started is something that is close to you because of the journey that you have taken, because of mentors probably you did not find at the right time, and you want to be that person for 18 year old, saying that, I did not have somebody like me when I was 18, but I want to be that person for you. I don't want you to go through the journey of confusion and frustration. I want to give you that clarity. And that's where I see Win with V making an impact to people from 18 to 25. And that's an amazing thing that you're doing, Vikram. I hope you continue this and you do great and add a lot of value to people. Now, moving forward, understanding this journey, it's important for us to also get into the reality of challenges, which means, now you talk to Gen Z, right? You talk to people who are 18 to 24, and when you talk to them, there are questions that they have, there are challenges that they are facing. Now, if we have to talk about the top three challenges because of the lack of time, if we just focus on the top three, saying that this will serve them the max, what would those top three challenges be that you come across when you talk to these people, and how do you help them? What is your advice to them on these three challenges?
Right, Prashant. So I think first I'll just put some light on what you just said. So it is now when we are 24, we kind of realize that when we were 18, everybody was equally messed up, and that's 6 years
Hmm.
later that you realize that everybody was equally messed up, and it was uh, that they were trying to be someone else, but they were not
Hmm.
that person actually. I'll talk about
That's a
it in
very
the
that's a very powerful thing, Vikram. Can you say that
yeah.
again? That's very powerful.
So it is for us to realize at this point of time that they were trying to be someone else,
Wow.
but exactly they were not what they were showing to the outer world, right? They had
Hmm.
storms inside. There were things that were going on, and as we kind of now also say that he's smiling from the outside, but you don't know what he's facing, but
Hmm.
you don't know what he's going through. That's a little intense when we talk about, but I think in the aspect of careers, in the aspect of corporate, in the aspect of how aspiring minds and leaders of the future are getting shaped. Prashant, I have been very fortunate. I've been fortunate enough that I was able to create this inclusive space for most of the people who turned up for a one-on-one session from me. And I think I always do this a little pat on the back that I
You should.
can create that inclusive space for like most of the people. And hence the interactions that I've had till now have not been limited to a specific area as such, but largely they have been limited to one or more of the following three things that I'll talk about. And I'll talk about the corporate aspect of it because that is what we eventually want to talk about. That is what our topic for today is, that we need to see how they see them as a challenge or how they look up in the corporate world. So the first is pretty normal. That's how to make the most effective resume, not have the last minute interview jitters, and eventually what roles or jobs to prepare for and apply for. Because that clarity, I think most of the people lack. If you talk about people who are doing MBAs, right? And this is no offense or disrespect to anybody, but mostly people who are entering into MBA, they're not entering because they want to do it, that's a choice for them. No, they enter because there's no other choice, right? And I think this is the place wherein somebody who has already started on a journey, and you can put them on the right path, that this is where you should explore more. I have had
Mm.
interactions with people who have done 12 internships. Imagine, Prashant, 12 internships in the past 12 months sitting at home, and I was bamboozled. I opened the resume and I'm like, boss, this is something that I can't understand. Just give me some time. I need to go through this. And eventually, what I realized was that none of those 12 internships have proven like very, very effective in terms that they can give the candidate a clear picture. Then what was
Mm.
the point that you spent the last 12 months doing all these 12 internships? Even if you would have done two, right,
Mm.
and you would have spent considerable time into that position, like a 3 month or a 6 month internship, that person would have been in a much different space altogether, be it
Mm.
knowledge, skill, experience, be it the clarity of thought that he needed.
Mm.
So related to this, the second question that mostly people ask for is that they look for if the approach that they're currently following, is it
Mm.
correct or right? Are they even on the right track, or do they need to go back to the drawing board and figure out where they're headed to? And I
Mm.
think this is very important. This is not for 18 years, 24, 25. I still do it.
Mm.
I still do it.
Mm.
There is a point in your time, in your life, every time, wherein you'll have to take a sheet of paper, you'll have to eliminate all the noise, and you'll have to sit back and relax and see where you're headed to. Because losing track of the vision because of the situations, because of the problems, because of the distractions in life at any stage, I think this is one of those aspects that we need to constantly look for. And I'll talk
Mm.
about more of how I tell the students or the people who interact with how they can overcome this challenge. And the third is, this is my favorite, and because this is the question that I also am looking an answer for right now, and I might find this on my journey in this corporate. This is how to be successful in what they do in their jobs, and how to leave a
Mm.
lasting impression. And I think, Prashant, this is something that we expect our leaders also to talk about, because there is cutthroat competition, right? You realize that there are the demand supply in terms of the jobs right now, and in terms of the availability of jobs right now, that is completely disturbed. You open a position and you see loads of applications pouring in. How do
Mm.
you go forward and you establish that competitive advantage over all the other candidates or all the other people or all the peers that are there in the
Mm.
company? Or and then eventually 30 years old, 35-year-old will come back and tell me that I am not getting promoted and hence I have to leave the company. Then again, you will
Mm.
have to go back to the drawing board. Then again, you'll have to see how you establish that competitive advantage. So I think all these questions that I have been trying to answer, they are not just related to one particular age group.
Mm.
I've had interaction with somebody who is a 38-year-old, well grown, well established man, who came back and asked me that, Vikram, my resume is not working. And I had to very politely, with respect, tell him that this resume is not really leading you to anywhere. And I think this is what is the power of this initiative is. And I think this has put me in a position wherein I can understand both sides of the table, because those
Mm.
experiences is what I get to learn. And this is a constant learning for me too. I give something, they give me back something. So now, Prashant, as I've completed 150 plus one-on-one sessions at the moment, what I've observed is two things. First is maximum youngsters in the age group of 18 to 25, they are very, very enthusiastic. They are very keen on improving themselves and they are very competitive, right? The second point is that they have huge aspirations. If you delve deeper into conversation with these youngsters, they're already thinking of tools, techniques, ways, methods that will put them in the best possible position to become the leaders of tomorrow. And I think there are just three things that I advise them to do, and this is what I advise everybody to do. Even I constantly remind myself of staying on track with these three things. First is continuous learning, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from the past 1 year in my corporate journey that I share with all the aspiring minds is that to really succeed, to really get to the goal we have set for ourselves, this seems like a cliched talk that everybody does, but to become the leaders of tomorrow, we just can't rely on what we already know. That is not going to build the leaders of tomorrow. I am reminded of this quote from Henry Ford. He says, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. So anyone who keeps learning stays young. And this is what I believe captures the essence of what I want to convey aptly. Being open to new perspectives, recognizing, accepting, and constantly taking action will surely put any of us in the driver's seat sooner or later. Now, it doesn't matter what skill set we possess right now, what are we doing right now, and where we are actually right now. What eventually will matter for our future, it will depend more on the fact that you keep learning constantly. I'll quote an example. This is not an example even. This is a real life scenario. Last year, COVID hit us, and it was unfortunate. It was an alarming situation. But one of the biggest problems that people faced was that just in a jiffy, there were losses, and people were laid off from this, right? And I think this one thing, जो हिंदी में कहावत है ना, ठोकर खा के सीख लो, तो तुमसे ज्यादा समझदार कोई नहीं. So one is that you enter into that self-loathing phase wherein you feel that khatam, everything is over, barbad ho gaya and everything. The other aspect is that you look at what the company or the organization or the organizations of the future or the businesses of the future demand from you, and hence this brings us to the aspect of puts more emphasis on the aspect of reskilling and upskilling. This is not just important for me or for an 18-year-old. This is important for everybody to realize, analyze, and understand that reskilling and upskilling is a constant part of your journey, right? And as I just told, we are living in this era of constant change where we are constantly seeing the skills are becoming redundant, expectations are shooting up to a whole new level. And hence, we as aspiring leaders, if we tend to rely on some static maps and we keep our horizon narrow to just what we are seeing, then we are bound to lose out in the longer run. And I genuinely believe that change and growth, they are associated with learning more deeply than we can ever give them credit for. So this is the first. Second is, we have heard a lot of things, but I'll give you the perspective of how I see it as and how I look into it. Second is knowing your own self. One of the most important aspects when we set out to do anything is how well we know our own selves. And when I say this, I'm reminded again of a quote from Socrates. So it's to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, right? And at this present point of time, the complexity of the modern world, as I just mentioned uh, right now in the conversation, the complexity of the modern world, it has risen to a level where people are too caught up evaluating everyone else that they forget to peep into their own selves, right? And we listen to what others want us to do. We we see that the outer image of what people are expecting us to do and how they want us to be is what we should be, but we forget who we really are and eventually end up being what we aren't. So showcasing that kind of an image, the two images that we already keep, one is what we aren't and what we really are, this gap is kind of pulling you apart from the reality that you need to know. So I believe self mastery is the foundation for everything we do. And these are the four questions that I always ask myself when I'm lost, when I feel that I have lost track of everything and there's nothing more to do in life and everything. And this is a crisis situation. You just ask four questions from yourself. And this is what like also advise to everybody that I interact with. First is, who are you? Now you have to shift your attention and peep into who's in there. You have to spend time with your own self, and that's the difficult part. You can't put your phone on D&D. You'll sit with your phone and you. And that's where you lose everything. You have to explore all the beautiful versions of yourself and see how they get along with each other to create a unique you. And I believe self exploration is directly proportional to a better and improved version of our own selves. And this is the first. Second is, what is important to you. Now you have to enlighten yourself from time to time what you genuinely care about. And I think this is where most of the people miss track of. They don't know what they genuinely care about. They don't know what they have to do and what's important for them in life. Third is, where are you headed to and what is the life you are trying to create for yourself. I'll take this. I'll take this example now. Prashant, you've also seen the corporate life, and you've been in that position where you've given interviews to different interviews, and they've always, and this is like the the most in demand question, the favorite question of all the interviews. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Right?
Yes.
And we never really realize what they wish to know. Not just answering this question, I'm just telling you how this where this perspective comes from. And this, they just want to know that if you're aware about what kind of life you're wanting to create in future for yourself, right? You've seen Google, and we just all the candidates that I talk to or anybody, they just Google and say, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? And I'm telling you, Prashant, the first 3 4 answers, they are like imprinted here, and people come in and they bring in their own element, and I'm like, yeah, the copied a boss. And everybody will say that we want to be this leader, we want to be into this position, and all that stuff. So their aspirations are very high, but they don't really know what life they're wanting to create in future. And what is important is that it never really means that you have to necessarily have it figured out all right now, or how to make it happen. It is more important that you should have an idea, a path, and you should have a sense of direction rather than set of directions. That's what we are given with, right? And I think this is how the education model in India is functioning right now. We just have some set of directions. We are, just imagine, you're taking out your family car first time when you've just got the license, right? You're overloaded with information, your father telling you something, your grandfather telling you something, and then your mother coming in, and then she pouring in all that mamta. And all of that combines and puts so much pressure on your head that you actually forget how to drive a car. If you just have the sense of direction, just the 3 4 things that you need to remember, right? I think that is the best possible thing to do. Fourth is, what is the best way in which you think you can contribute? And I think this is where I have already talked to you about this aspect, which is, how can we contribute more than our professional titles, and how can we be more and give back to the society. So now, when I say this, it isn't really limited to any role or a particular job or any project. It's more about knowing what you are good at and how do you embody that, right? And last thing that I would want to talk about is persistence, consistency, and trust. Now, these, in my opinion, are the only 3 skills that we need to work on. Eventually, whatever we do in our lives, in order to achieve our goal or that position that we've always aspired for, we'll have to put in that little extra, keep working despite failures or problems, and constantly back ourselves, right? Famous examples again. Henry Ford's early businesses failed, and they left him broke many times before he actually founded Ford Motor Company. You talk about Albert Einstein. He was thought to be a mentally handicapped person before changing the face of modern physics and going on to win the Nobel Prize. Even if I talk about the normal scenarios for us, imagine you're constantly trying hard to get your next job, right? And you appear for interviews, and somehow, because of one or the other reasons, you are failing to make the mark. But instead of just making peace with it and assuming that you are not good enough, you go back, you seek feedback, you check where you went wrong, you analyze what more you need to do, you seek help if needed, and eventually trust yourself to come back stronger till you make it. What's better than that? I think persistence will take you there, making sure you get it. Consistency will keep you there. And your trust in your own self will constantly remind you of what you've already achieved and make you feel confident about attracting more of it. And that's how we keep running, right? It is all about the perspective and understanding the importance of working on these three skills. Now, all the 3 points that I just mentioned, Prashant, I believe these are the bare minimum. And if I have to specifically talk about the leadership context and their implications, you'll see there is a direct correlation in the qualities possessed by any great leader and these three, right? Great leaders are great learners. They just don't rely upon what they already know. They constantly upgrade themselves, right? Before looking out for the outer structure, they are already clear about what holds them from within, their values, their systems, how and what they function. They actually have complete control and clarity over themselves. And lastly, they are persistent, they are consistent, and they always back themselves up. So, in a nutshell, if I talk about the long term vision for any aspiring leader, and as I always tell the people who are coming out, even my brother who is 18 now, it should be to constantly observe, listen, interact, learn, and trying to imbibe what we actually seek inspiration from. I think that was a pretty long answer from my end, but I think I have now tried to do justice to all the things that I wanted to put forward.
Good. I'm glad you did, Vikram. And let me tell you, whatever you said is so vital. And what was most important that I think is driving this whole conversation that we had in the last few minutes was the fact that it's not age dependent as much as we are talking about Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, 18 to 25. It's important to understand that the whole process of continuous learning, the whole process of reskilling and upskilling, the whole journey of understanding yourself, who you are within, what are your values, the clarity of vision, where are you in next 5 years, it is not age specific. Yes, the confusion is higher, the fear is higher, the uncertainty is much higher when you're 18 because you're very new into this. As I spoke about earlier, it's a transition. So it's overwhelming because you are transitioning into a very different phase of your life. So it's understandable. But what if you are an 18 to 25-year-old? What you need to know is that this confusion, this will remain, this fear, this uncertainty will remain with you for life. Its intensity, its degree changes, but it continues because as long as we are alive, this continuous confusion and uncertainty will remain. But as Vikram rightly pointed out, constantly checking with yourself, who are you? What are your values? What is your vision? Don't look too far. Where do I see myself going in next 3 years? If you have a clarity of that vision and then a sense of direction, a very powerful point again, Vikram, that you don't need to have a set of directions, a sense of direction saying that, theek hai, I think I'm moving in the right direction and I'll do a constant check and review to see if I'm moving at the right path or not. That itself is good enough. That's very powerful. And that is something that we should do at whatever age we are, chahe hum 20 ho, chahe hum 80 ho. That learning process is what keeps us young and keeps us going. That is a very powerful point that you brought out, Vikram. This reminds me, that when we are in school, we are always told that 10th standard hai, board exams hai, just do this and then life is set. And then we finish 10th and then you're like, 12th hai, board exams mein achhe lao, join a great college, take a job and life is set. Then you join a great college and you're like, there's more pressure. Then you finish college, you get a job and you're like, now life is set. And you're like, oh my God, work also comes with its own challenges. Now I have to grow the hierarchy. I need to move to different levels. I need to learn this. So it's important to understand, and for especially for an 18-year-old, कि ये journey हमेशा के लिए है. This journey of learning, unlearning, skilling, reskilling, continuous learning, constantly trying to figure out what next, where am I going. ये जिंदगी भर चलता रहेगा. Don't run away from it. Sooner you accept it, saying that this is a way of life, it becomes easier, right? Whenever you, as I said earlier, when you even see a 60-year-old guy and you feel like, yeah, his life sorted, he's already 60, he has done so
Right.
many things. You don't know what he is going through. He is in a great state of confusion, but with time comes wisdom, with experience comes wisdom, where you accept that, saying that यार जिंदा हूँ, इसलिए ये confusion, ये uncertainty है और ये रहेगी. It's all right. Let me just try to see अगले 2-3 साल की clarity and move with it. So, Vikram, I know you said that you gave a very long answer, but you brought out some amazing points, and I'm glad you brought out points that are not just relevant to 18 to 25. It's relevant to every age group, and I'm sure the audiences that we have in our with us now are also thinking, even if I am not of 18 to 25, the challenges are the same, the thought process is the same, just that the intensity is different and the experience is different, right? So that's a very powerful point, Vikram. So thank you so much for bringing that. I would want you to quickly repeat just those 3 to 4 questions that you said, so that whoever is making notes
Absolutely.
can make note of that. What are those
Absolutely.
questions of introspection that you mentioned?
So I'll mention the points first and then the sub points. So the first point was, as I spoke about, it was continuous learning. Second point is knowing your own self. And while you know your own self, you have to ask four questions from you. The first is, who are you? Second is, what is important to you? Third is, where you are headed to and what is the life you're trying to create for yourself. And the
Wonderful.
fourth is, what is the best way in which you think you can contribute. And the third point that I spoke about was persistence, consistency, and trust. The three skills that I think are the
Yes.
most important needed at any point in life. At any point in life.
Absolutely. And I loved what you said when you said that persistence is what will take you there, and consistency is what will keep you there, and trust in yourself is what will keep you going. So that's very powerful. So thanks for that, Vikram. Now, Vikram, next question that I would like to move to is something that I'm very interested in. Not that I was not interested in the earlier question, but this is a burning topic. That is like fire, which is like there's a lot of conversations that happen around Gen X, Y, Z, saying that there is a lot of impatience. They want things quickly, instant gratification. These are
Right.
the people who do not believe in things that the way they are. They're constantly trying to move things, shift things, change things. Now, thinking or talking to a 24-year-old, somebody who's already in the corporate world, who has exposed to the work world, who's also seen what is the journey of coming from 18 to 24, can you please give me your perspective on this? I've heard a lot from people who are 30, 40, 50, 60, and they're great points that come out, but I want to listen from you, from being from that generation. What are your thoughts on all of this perspective and conversations around Gen Z, Gen Y, and all that?
I think, Prashant, this is a great question. And I think, as you said, this is a burning topic. I think this is, I don't know, this is like a forest fire that is spreading. People just want to get an answer. And this is no disrespect to anybody, as I already mentioned. Be it any age, we are just focusing on getting the answer or relying upon what we already know or what has already happened in the past. Now, honestly speaking, Prashant, I don't really think this is entirely true. This is partially true. Okay. And I'll go on to explain what are the factors and things that I think. So I think generations, even if you pick up the history and see everything, they are, I think, shaped by context in which they emerged. Right. And if you talk about what drives and motivates different kinds of people from different generations, then you think you are on the right track. It is very important for us to get into the heads of different people and understand what motivates them. There is this very important concept, but something that is widely known by everybody in the HR fraternity, and that is Maslow's need hierarchy theory. किसी ने भी HR करा उसने मैस्लो का नाम सुना होगा एंड उसने पढ़ा होगा. And I think that was one place where we got exposed to the kind of needs different people have, right? I think I'll not base my answer just basis on the needs that they gave you, but if you think on the same track, there are some basic needs and there are some self-actualization needs, right? If you talk about our generation, we already have most of 90% of our basic needs fulfilled. Have given us a life wherein they have given us a shelter, they provide us with good food, they raise us in the best possible manner, they send us to good schools for quality education. So if you try to see, there is a shift in the kind of mindset that the people already had in the earlier ages. And what is the mindset now? If you talk about my father and me, there's a lot of difference. If you talk about anything that is related to behavioral aspect, there is a lot of difference. A very apt example right now, talk about cryptocurrency. There was a bubble that was going around, right, this like 2 3 4 months back. I have seen like 90% of my age group people and 18 to 25 trying to explore that fact because their risk appetite is more. They're trying to pick up that risk appetite because they know the reward will be more. If you talk
Hmm.
to my father, he's saying invest your money in FD. He still believes in FD. So what I'm trying to explain is understand the context in which the generation has already emerged. Try to talk to the people, right? And I believe if we try and consider each and every individual as human and not divide them basis the generations, we'll find that generational differences in preferences and values are not that big. Eventually, if you talk, my father has given me the same set of values that his father gave him. He's
Hmm.
transferred that to me. How I see it and how I take it brings in a perspective. So,
Hmm.
most of the times, what I think is this stereotyping results in wrong expectation setting. And hence, as a result of that, the wrong expectation setting, many have this notion that Gen Z specifically is difficult to lead and they'll not stay long enough in one organization. I'd like to point out a few characteristics that make Gen Z stand out. Now, these are really important for us to talk before we run over the expectations that Gen Z have from their leaders. As in my opinion, if more people understand these aspects, it'll be a win-win, right? So the first is identity. The Gen Z population, if you see around, they are always looking for ways to experiment and they try what works best for them. They look out for all the options available. They'll try to delve deep into what option is best for them. They'll constantly be seeking different versions or different ways of being themselves and always look out to shape their individual identities over time. Yes, they have a vision in their head, but they are not constrained or bound to the fact that they want to stick to one thing. Like you talk about the earlier generations. My father has been into the business since same business since the past 25, 30 years, right? And if you talk about people who are of our generation, you don't give them value, you don't respect them, the basic little things, and they'll start looking out. Even if it is just 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever the time is. So I believe this is one thing. The identity is one thing. Second is they place very high value on individual expression. That's one thing that I think is very, very important. Now, Gen Z respects the difference of opinion. They'll talk, they'll understand you, and they'll try to find the practical implication of each and every little thing. And this interaction, they'll respect all your opinions, all your facts, all your values that you're giving them. But they'll also be okay with the fact that this might be your last conversation with them because it didn't align well with them. They're open with that fact, right? They are not bound by this fact that they have to just imbibe what they are listening from here and there. They'll put their own heads, they'll put their own individual expression on it, and then they'll try to seek meaning out of it. This is the second. The third is that they're pragmatic, and I think this is one of the most important points right now because with large chunks of information freely available on the web, that the Gen Z loves practicality and taking informed decisions. I'll quote an example here. Let's all do this. Let's do a research of 18 to 25 year, and I'll seek answers in the comment section. If somebody from 18 to 25-year old is present here, just tell me if you willfully want to take up a contract job. That's just a normal question. And we are talking about the change in economy. We are talking about gig economy. We are talking about work from home. We are talking about contract jobs. We are talking about workers who want to work as per their own wish. Just let me know if anybody. Prashant, just keep an eye if somebody answers that.
Sure.
What I'm trying to explain is there are no youngsters that I've had an interaction with that are okay with taking a contract job. What does that speak about the Gen Z? Gen Z knows the value of stability. They know what their needs are. They know that they are very concerned about their own future, and hence they try to make informed decisions. And I believe we are no different than the generations that have passed or that are elder to us. They always wanted stability. They always wanted a one full-time job. They always seek a full-time employment. This is just one aspect that I have closely observed. I'm just sharing it with you and everybody present here. I think this is just one thing that I observed, and I saw that there is nothing as such that is going around that's very different in terms of the generation. It's just the expectations and the way we look at different things that has changed over time. Fourth is Gen Z is highly inclusive. We're talking about this virtual space and all these. If you talk about my father, my mother, they're very, very awkward when they have to talk on a video call. They're like ghar jaake milwa lo, and that's the best part about it. But you see, Gen Z started interacting on these virtual platforms much before. They were not bound to the virtual space because COVID hit them. No, they were already into that WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat. So whatever they see on the physical front, meeting people in person, and whatever they see people expressing their concerns or their thoughts online, virtually, they're highly inclusive to that. And then again, they go back to their individual expression. They go back and understand if that aligns well with them or not. And if it doesn't, they just politely ignore that. So these are the four very, very important characteristics that I think people need to understand about Gen Z. Even me also, if I'm talking to all these people, I place a value over all these factors because I know eventually everything is coming down to these, right?
Hmm.
So keeping all of these in mind, I think it eventually also comes down to how much effort we make in understanding these as elements, because these are crucial in defining the interpersonal behavior at work.
Hmm.
No, you now just let's go back to that initial question, right? And that is, the Gen Z leaves the job. If there is no proper interpersonal behavior at work, let me know which generation will stick by. Everybody
Hmm.
is bound to leave if the behavior is not right, right? And then we talk about they are not stable. If you don't have that kind of interpersonal behavior wherein you come together as a team and work as one, tell me one generation that will stick by, right? So it's
Hmm.
all the same. It's all the same. It's just that हमने वो चश्मा अलग पहन लिया और हम उसको अलग नजरिए से देख रहे हैं, because we have
Hmm.
got the experiences from our parents, from our elders, and now we have got so much information at our hands
Hmm.
that we try to see what is best for us,
Hmm.
right? If you talk about jobs, how have they evolved? HR पहले एक डिपार्टमेंट होता था, right? Conventionally it was just one HR department. They used to look after recruitment, they used to look after the talent management, the policies, you talk about performance and everything. Now everything is specific, everything has become specialized. You talk about complement, that's altogether a different field. You talk about recruitment, that is a different, entirely different function for organization. You talk about business partnering, roles are constantly evolving. The way companies and organizations have started seeing the scenario is the way the Gen Z is shaping up and is the way they are looking at things now.
Hmm.
So there are options available, there are information available at ease. So this is kind of what is shaping the Gen Z. Now, having said this, I'll try to put out what the Gen Z expects in clear black and white, right?
So just
And I'll,
just sorry to interrupt you here.
yeah,
A couple of points that I would like to share here. Based on what you just said. Before that, let's quickly look at the comments here and see what everyone is saying. Answering your question, Mahima Sahini says no, won't prefer a contract job. Sujit says, well said, persistence, consistency, and trust. Yes. Mosmi Paul says, well said, Vikram. Vision, purpose, these are very important to focus first rather to continue so many things. Dr. Usha Rupnarayan says, a leader has the ability to inspire. We are all leaders, not simply in the corporate world, but leaders over our own life as well. This is coming from the previous point that you shared. Dr. Usha is appreciating the talk show, saying young people need more positive role models. They need motivation, mentors, and methods to find their way. Yes, Shikha says very important to communicate through feelings instead of trust. Mona Lisa says, as a young entrepreneur, I can validate his each and every word. So these are the few comments that are coming our way, and it's important for us to understand what's running in the minds of people who are actually listening to us at this point of time. Now, coming back to what you were saying, Vikram, a couple of points that remain a highlight for me is number one, as leaders who are leading different generations, who have people of different generation in the organization, a key point that you mentioned is to understand that end of the day everybody is a human. First of all, have that perspective that we are all human beings. Number two, understand the fact that the context that each and every generation is born and brought up in is different, which means their perspective of looking at the same thing is different. What might appear yellow to you in their context, it might be red. So you're not wrong, they're not wrong, they just have a different perspective because of the context that they're in. Now, you spoke about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you brought out a very valid point that we need to understand where does each generation fit in into that hierarchy of needs. When we speak about Gen Z, the basic need of survival, कि मैं जिंदा रहूंगा कि नहीं, basic need of my basic needs of life that are required in terms of food and shelter and education is taken care of by the previous generation. They have provided that to me. So Gen Z has a higher risk appetite because they're not going behind survival. That is their context. Their context is that this is already there. I have it already. So I don't have to struggle for this. I don't have this. This is what I need to strive for. Now, what is that? I'm looking for a quality of life. I'm looking at living my life to the fullest. I'm looking to experience life as much as possible, as big as possible, as many things as possible, because that is life for me. It's filled with possibilities. But the previous generation's context, which they were not wrong, that was their context was survival, because they build that context of survival strong is why this generation is able to live in a context of quality of life. If they had
absolutely.
not done that, then we would be the generation fighting to build the survival, and the next generation would have done what this generation is doing, right? So the
Absolutely,
context is different. So they have actually empowered us to look for quality rather than survival. So that is what we need to first understand. Second thing, once we have understood this context, Vikram, a very good point that you mentioned is कि because of the change of context, the expectations are different, which means Gen Z is more aligned towards risk taking. Gen Z is more aligned towards not compromising on their values and their beliefs. Gen Z is inclusive, but they have their head, they are very strong about what they believe in, and they would stick their head out and they will say what they need to say and they will put their point across. If there is no alignment, they will leave. Then do not blame them for not sticking with you for a very long time or being tough. Your point is that they're not being tough. They're just being honest and communicating, saying that, boss, I'm not going to compromise and struggle inside and be somebody else in front of you and somebody else outside and go and bitch about things at work at a third party and in a different place. I will tell you how I exactly feel. If I don't feel respected, you will know. If I don't feel I'm not aligned with you, you will know. So I will communicate. And I expect inclusiveness at a workplace, which means a team needs to work like a team. If I feel there is lack of teamwork, if I feel there is lack of trust, if I feel there is a lack of taking people together in collaboration, I will speak out. And if it doesn't change, I will move out. I want to express myself. I want to be sure that I am who I am in whatever space I am. I'm not ready to compromise on that. Now, these are the very valid points that you mentioned, Vikram. And today's leaders who are leading these people need to first understand, irrespective of you leading a 60-year-old, 20-year-old, 50-year-old, first point that he made is to understand that the context is different. So, understand what context is each generation coming from. That will make things easier, and you won't see it as a one size fits all leadership. And second thing is every generation has a certain level of expectations and the way they want to present themselves, they want to express themselves. Get aware of that. Understand what this generation wants, and specifically to Gen Z, they want inclusiveness, they want to express themselves, they want to be open to communicate, and they want collaboration, they want things to move forward. And a big myth that Vikram is trying to break is that do not represent Gen Z as someone who is not looking for stability. Gen Z is looking for stability, but not at a cost of compromising at their values. They're looking for stability, saying that I want to be myself, I want to express myself, I'll give my best to this organization, but because of you providing me stability, I won't compromise on all that. If I'm not getting stability here, I'll get it somewhere else. I'll keep jumping and moving till I find a place that aligns with what I want. So these are the points that you brought forward, Vikram. Very valid points, very powerful points. That's why I wanted to interrupt before we move into the next phase so that we don't miss on these points. So thank you so much for that. And in comments, I would request everybody who is with us to please share what they are thinking about what we are talking about. If you have any questions for Vikram, please ask those questions. You have any questions for me, ask me those questions, and we'll get back to that. Now, coming back to you, Vikram, please go ahead and take the conversation forward.
Prashant, first, it was not an interruption. It was more like a value addition to what I was trying to explain, and you putting in your perspective into it has kind of told me that it has also pushed me that what I was talking about kind of aligns well with what I was
It
trying to
does.
explain
It
to the
does. It
audience.
definitely does. It's very powerful, for sure.
So, Prashant, I think everybody here who is a leader who just wants to understand कि यार करें क्या, कि इनको बताओ, हमें एक रास्ता बता दो. Like that, this is what my father says. तुम बता दो हमें फिर हम कैसे करें. It's as simple as that. So they just want to know that
Yeah.
हमें तो समझ नहीं आ रहा कि तुम क्या चाहते
Yeah.
हो, तो तुम हमें लिख
Yeah.
के बता दो या बोल के बता दो. So it's more about let's talk about what I think Gen Z aspects, and I think these points will speak a lot about the youngsters' mindset and how by just changing the way we are doing some of the things that are very important in the corporate setup, like, we can gain the maximum benefit out of and extract the maximum effort from the Gen Z. So this is one thing you have to understand, that Gen Z is in an age where they can put in extra hours, not just because it will disturb their work life balance or anything. They can put in extra hours to improve themselves, right? In case you're giving them a feedback, they'll go back to the drawing board, they'll again understand where they're going wrong. They have that time. They're not into that age where they'll become complacent of the fact कि अब तो हो गए 25 साल कॉर्पोरेट में, अगर अब कोई फीडबैक आ भी रहा है, सो इट्स ओके, नो प्रॉब्लम, एक बंदे से आ रहा है, रेस्ट एवरीथिंग इज फाइन, माय टीम इज वर्किंग फाइन विद मी. सो आई थिंक द फर्स्ट पॉइंट, much talked about, But yes, I will speak because this is something that we look up to, and that's open communication. Now, the Gen Z believes that if you expect them to follow you, you have to gain their trust, right? That's the most important, and that only happens when you think of them as your stakeholders. Now we're talking about people who have invested into our company. We talk about who we are delivering value to, who we are serving, who are our clients. But we forget that our employees or the people who are working as a part of my team, they are also our own stakeholders. And I think this has happened. This is happening over, and you see a lot of Fortune 500 companies. You see the great places to work. Why are those places great? That's just because they lay emphasis on delivering the value. As I'll quote Dave Ulrich here, he's an HR leader, and he says managing the organization from the outside in. So you have to see inside first to deliver value outside, right? You have to think of your employees as your essential stakeholders. And moving ahead, a big part of building this rapport, the trust amongst your team, is having a mechanism for open communication, right? This allows the team to understand that what actually is expected from them, and hence it fosters engagement and makes them realize that whatever they do matters in the success of the business. That's what they crave. They are not looking for anything else. They're just looking that even if they've moved this table by an inch, that has helped gain the organization this much. This is how they've impacted the business. And I'll quote an example here. So just take picturize this scenario wherein you're stuck on an urgent project deliverable, right? And you as a leader, you have not made your team that inclusive over the years or over the time that they can freely come out of their bubble and can express themselves. Now if you ask them that please tell me what to do, and then you go on to do what you wanted to do, they'll stop expressing themselves, right? It's like you build it over time. It's not an overnight or a fortnight or a monthly process. It's how you deal. So you might have just missed out on what the person in your team could have come up with and could have helped you in delivering that project on time, right? And hence to freely share their mind and to be in that state, this constant mechanism of open communication has to be formulated into any kind of working in the business or among the teams. So this helps by leading everyone to be on the same page first, then moving in the same direction towards the same goal. That is what essentially businesses were all about: moving together in the same direction, heading towards the same goal, vision, mission statement, all that you have in place. That will only happen when everybody is freely communicating and opening up with each other. Now, additionally, it also will help you bring out new ideas, which will make them feel that they've actively contributed to the success of the team and the organization at large. It will also help in bringing clarity of thought, which is very important. People have entered into the corporate, they've started working, but they don't have clarity of thought. They just do the 9 to 6, are happy with their 30-day salary, and they don't know what to do with their life. I see that as a leader of the future, if I can help somebody bring in clarity of thought about themselves, that would be the best possible position to be in. So this makes them more wiser. This gives them the space to be more creative and then eventually back themselves up, the trust that they can show in themselves. And finally, the most important part of building up the open communication mechanism is vocalizing the feedback, and that is a two-way thing, good or bad. The Gen Z expects the feedback at regular intervals. Now, as a step ahead, if you have a feedback that is not good, that's bad, they love it when they know how they can improve it and what can be done more to meet the set expectations. Trust me when I say this. We as a bunch of people, like I don't know, I'm on the verge. So Gen Z is 1997 onwards. I'm 1996 December. I don't know which generation to count in,
Just
but
missed it. That's all right.
let's just say a mixture of YZ. So on the borderline. So if I talk about the generation Z or Y in specific, one thing that you should be understanding is that we are very enthusiastic. We want to know how we can improve ourselves and our performance, how we can surpass the set expectations or just be in a position to meet the set expectations. So that is one of the key elements. Second is that I would want to put forward is we expect shared vision and goals. Now, what do I say is it's just a translation of what we are talking about when we talk about the good communication. Now, shared vision and goals will come when you actively communicate with your team. Now, it is very important to see everyone headed into the same direction and working towards achieving the same outcome. Now, the
Hmm.
Gen Z essentially wants itself to be invested wholly into the efforts of the team. Now, they don't want that they are the immediate decision makers. No,
Hmm.
even if they are wholly invested into the efforts of the team, they know what their leaders are doing, they know why they have done that, they know what is their implication on the business, then they kind of know what how will this impact the bottom line of the organization, right? This is what the Gen Z expects itself to do. They
Hmm.
want to be invested wholly and focus on the commonalities, or just move together in the same direction, and eventually they cherish the idea of we over us or you. And hence bringing together that shared vision, wherein you
Hmm.
openly communicate, you talk about goals, you talk about how to go about situation, you talk about the problems, the technicalities, all the models in place, all the technologies in place, anything and everything. I think you gain their mutual trust and belief. That's
Hmm.
the most important. Now, the next 2 points that I'm talking about are just a shift in mindset, and it's just how um, we expect the communication to come from. Right now, the third point is Gen Z is obsessed with acknowledgement over praise, and the fourth point is that they are obsessed with empowerment over enablement. Now, when I talk about acknowledgement over praise, now this is the one point that I want to talk about, because there's a very thin line, right? You will talk to, and I hope that you have spoken to a lot of, considering your experience and everything, you talk to business leaders every day. They come up with such problems and say, "यार मैंने bonus तक दे दिया उसको, वो फिर भी नहीं रुका," and he left the organization, right? So more than anything else, I believe the Gen Z wants to know that their energy and efforts aren't wasted, like, and that the work that they really do, that makes a difference in one way or the other. And choosing acknowledgement over praise will actually mean that you just recognize the person's strength and inner character by using the work they have already done as evidence.
Hmm.
Second, this will show that that you value process more than the outcome, which eventually will turn out as a highlight, as the repeatable steps for others to seek inspiration from and learn. The
Hmm.
third is that it will also go on to probably demonstrate that you're actually paying attention to what the other person has done, because you sound more specific and detailed. Your feedback goes as purely observation based, and you let your team member know that he or she has the ability to make that difference each and every day that they come to work. Their contribution matters, their work matters. And
Hmm.
hence, when you delve into this nitty gritty, this specificity and the details of how you express yourself, that makes the whole difference. It is just that both have to deal with the same thing, but it's how just we communicate our thought process with these people, right? Going on these same lines, I talked about empowerment and enablement. So they are preferring empowerment over enablement, two of the biggest factors that I want to talk about. Let's talk about a presentation that we've just made, right? And you asked your 5 team members to work collaboratively and collectively on this presentation, and they came out with this end result. Now that presentation is big time messed up. They just mailed you, it's 10 at night, and your urgent deliverable is 10 in the morning, right? There are two ways that you'll go here from. One is that you redo it for your team and then give them the feedback in a way that you provide the means to make your team able, right? And the second way is that you ask for everybody's availability. I know it's 10 at night, but this particular process or this particular thing that you'll do is going to lay the foundation for future. Now, how do I see it as? What you do is you sit together, collaborate, interact, and have a meaningful conversation with your team members and ask questions and listen to how they came to their conclusions and what was their thought process while making that particular presentation. And what you need to do is you just need to fill in the knowledge gaps and then give them feedback and give them the time to come back again with that presentation. You might have just missed the deadline, or you might have just not delivered 100% on that deadline. But by choosing the second option, you have supported your team in accomplishing something that they could have done themselves in the right conditions. It might have been just possible that they were too caught up in that deadline kind of a thing, that they could not brainstorm that much and come out to a situation, a solution that that could have been possible for you to say that yes, it is clicking with me and it is going forward and we can go ahead with that.
Hmm.
Now when you choose this second one, it makes all the difference, right? Because it eventually boils down to how you treated your team
Hmm.
as, and how you instilled them with that kind of a thing and left them with a thought to ponder upon, that even if it was 11 at night, he or she was available. They guided me,
Hmm.
filled my knowledge gaps, gave me the feedback, wanted me to rework on that and take ownership of that particular thing. So when you
Hmm.
start empowering, you somewhere give the permission and invite others into their own power and authority,
Hmm.
right? It will consume the same time as enablement. Let me be very honest, because in case you had to sit on the presentation and rework it would have taken 2 to 3 hours of yours, right? So it will take the same time, it will consume the same time, but the return on investment will be exponentially better.
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying. Initially, I just talk about how the expectation setting and the stereotypes that we are already caught up into, that are setting the context for us and that are making us believe कि ये छोड़ जाएगा. Gen Z,
Hmm.
they are not going to be stable in the organization. If I
Hmm.
try to understand where they're coming from, what are their needs, wants, how they want to see different scenarios, how they perceive different situations, I'm telling you, Prashant, difference बस वही है. It's just that
Hmm.
how you perceive them as, and it's important. Like I see, I all our leaders, they are in their that position where they have their own kids also, right?
Hmm.
They also sit with them, have an open, and at some point in time, they'll have to realize that if they have to make waves with them, they'll have to first understand where they are coming from. They have to
Hmm.
understand the context they are coming from. You've heard our parents say this. मतलब, I'm coming from this Punjabi family, so they talk about it. कि तुम्हें अगर वो करना पड़ता जो हमने किया था, तो तुम्हें समझ आता कि हम लोग कहाँ से आए. बट हमें वो
Hmm.
करना नहीं पड़ा. We never
Hmm.
really did that. तो जब हमने वो नहीं किया, तो मुझे वो समझ नहीं आएगा. चाहे आप मुझे बता दो that you used to cross the river to go to the school, you had to sail through the boats, and you have to do, that will never come, because practicality, doing things firsthand, and anything over the theoretic knowledge that you can give to this younger generation, they will value that, right? So putting them into such situations is most important. Prashant, there are two more things. I'll take some time on that, if you allow.
Please continue.
Now,
Please go.
apart from what I have already mentioned, right, there are two things that I genuinely want, that our leaders must be talking about constantly, reminding the young aspiring leaders about the value these hold. Right, you talk about that the younger generation is impatient. Yes, they are. They are very impatient because they know they have options. So first is patience, and I agree that we are a little impatient. The Gen Z is a little impatient, and what we expect from leaders is, or probably what I am trying to put forward is, that we need to tell them that patience is indeed a virtue. It's not a vice, right? I'll give this example. So this was a person at a child, a candidate that I was interacting with. He came up and he's not able to crack this job and everything. So now he comes up after 2 months, and I've told him what to do, how to do things, and everything. And he's following. He's a very obedient kid. He follows everything for the next 2 months. He's doing everything he possibly could to gain that position, that job, right? And he finally cracks that role. But now he comes back after a month and gives me a call and he says, भैया यहाँ तो कुछ नहीं हो रहा. It's been a month, मैंने तो कुछ मेरे को तो कुछ इन्होंने सिखाया ही नहीं काम. So, and I am saying it's just been a month. Your manager or your senior managers are just trying to make you familiar with the culture and the kind of work they do. They're just trying to not make you feel overwhelmed in the first month itself. They're giving you space so that you can understand how things actually work in the practical setup. You're a fresher. You've just come back from that kind of a thing, and I just felt that there is a long lost need for patience to be instilled into the young minds. Now, patience has a role in every aspect of shaping an individual into a successful leader. Why I say this? Because sometimes it's very important for you to sit back and evaluate and research. Sometimes you just need to define practical goals and set realistic expectations on performance, right? And almost every time, having patience becomes valuable in planning, negotiation, critical thinking, creativity, and how do you see the scenarios? So I just had one thing to say, that stay. That's the only word I have. Stay. We'll interact after 6 months you are into the organization, because once they start seeing you scale up, they're going to give you so much work. That will be learning, that will be exposure, that will be everything to you. And then you'll feel what I was doing in the first month was just a setup, was just a trailer of what was to come for me. I think this is one thing that needs to be taught, and this is something that we can't see it as, because Prashant, again going back to the patience, kahan se aayegi? It will not come from anything. And you talk about, take an example. um, Here's my brother, right, and here's my grandfather. Both are talking to a customer executive, right? Now if the customer executive does not pick up the call, and it's just that beep sound going in for the next 5 minutes, my brother would cut the call and say baad mein kar lenge call. Whereas the older generation, they wait patiently because they want their work to get done. Even if it takes 10 minutes of the time, they'll give that as a feedback, that your customer service is really weak. It took me 10 minutes sitting there patiently waiting for the customer executive to get back to me. But the Gen Z is saying that they'll just replace the product altogether. And what will they do? They'll just go out on Twitter and write some comments about the company, customer services, this and that. Now this is what I'm talking about. Patience that needs to be instilled. Now, second is that probably is a lot more talked about, and I think needs much more emphasis. Gratitude. Gratitude is one such simple act of being thankful and the readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness. This isn't just a nice thing to do, as it has been labeled as lately. It goes far beyond feeling good in the moment. What I'm trying to explain is that showing gratitude towards what you have right now is a very powerful thing to do, right? You talk about these Gen Z, they have these conversations with these managers that if you can't give me this much hike, I have other companies at my hand. So that's what I'm saying. They just need one stimulus to give them the response. They'll not sit back and analyze the complete situation, right? It's just that if you offer somebody a 6 LPA or you offer somebody a 8 LPA, they'll intrinsically just go forward and choose the 8 one because that's giving them more money. They're not going to put more emphasis and that's okay. Money, wanting money, having the compensation in hand, that's okay. But what I'm trying to explain is what you have at hand right now, understanding its importance and understanding that you got this because you were deserving, you deserve this. That's a very important thing to do because it will let you savor the present moment, the gratitude for what currently exists, that makes your present more accessible. And that's where your full power is. If you're in the present, you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're not caught up, you're in the present. That's where all the power lies. It helps you think more strategically. Appreciation, constant appreciation for what we have right now, that opens up the mind. It expands our thinking and allows us to look outward instead of internalizing all the distractions, inconveniences, problems, and complexities. Right? It helps us make more resilient, helps us lead a more smarter and a happier life. So what I need to actually conveys that you need to make them believe that wherever they sit in the organizational chart, they are at the center of the influence. Their words and actions are important, and how they show up has a ripple effect on others too. Like you need to make them believe that your leadership doesn't dominate; it cultivates. That's what I would want this topic to be left at. That it's not about dominating; it's about cultivating. So I believe I answered the Gen Z aspect in the best possible manner I could, Prashant, but I would want to seek inputs if you have any on this.
Sure, Vikram. Great inputs that you brought forward, and I was very keenly listening to what you were saying because everything that you were saying was coming with conviction. You were not just saying things to say things. It was coming out so strongly. There was so much emotion in everything that you're saying, and everything that we're saying so practically applicable that it was also aligning with what this show is all about. If you see, the tagline of the show is "Little things about leadership that matter the most." And what you spoke about are those little things which are not difficult to do, which get ignored in day-to-day activities, which we don't give essential importance that it actually deserves. And I think that's what Gen Z is asking for. Gen Z is saying कि कुछ hi-fi high फंडू चीजें नहीं चाहिए. Give us that basic respect, give us that basic trust, involve us in what is happening in the organization. acknowledge versus appreciation that you said. We're not looking for any big things, big deals, big vacation. What we're looking for is that I know that my leader, my team knows what I'm doing. There is an acknowledgement, there is an awareness of my efforts, and there is clarity of vision and alignment of vision, saying that I know how this is contributing to the greater vision of the team, of the function, of the department, of the organization. So that I understand, कि मैं ये पूरे puzzle में fit कहाँ होता हूँ. I have that understanding. Now that you brought out, that was very important. You spoke about communication. You spoke about feedback, that you need to be open to both sides, giving and receiving feedback. That is an expectation from Gen Z, saying that I'll take feedback, I'll apply it, but I also want others and even leadership to be open to what we are saying, and don't just take it and don't do anything about it. I also want to see an implementation or an explanation of what was done with that feedback. Otherwise,
Right.
I would stop communicating. बोलते हैं ना कि that
Right.
if people around you who used to speak a lot suddenly become silent, you need to know that there's something wrong with your leadership.
Something wrong.
कि
Yes.
don't be happy कि यार ये बंदा बहुत चाव चाव करता था अब चुप हो गया है. It is something wrong. You're not allowing people to express because you're not valuing their expression. So that was a very valid point that you brought forward. So, and another point that you brought forward was enablement versus empowerment. Now, that is a beautiful, beautiful point, Vikram, because we need to understand it. And again, you brought out a point of leaders saying that कि तुम parents भी तो एक दिन बनोगे, or you might already be parents. So you will need to understand it even as a life skill, not just as a leadership skill. How to understand the other generation, how to relate to the other generation, how to communicate to the other generation, and how to empower them instead of looking at short-term fix. कि मैं अभी क्या कर सकता हूँ आग बुझाने के लिए. How do I actually train them in a way where शायद ये आग ना बुझे, maybe some things will get burnt in this fire, still not to an extreme level. I'm okay, I'm ready to take a little damage, but it will enable them, it will empower them to stop big fires in future. So I rather
Absolutely.
empower them, saying that so that was a very valid point that you brought forward. So enablement versus empowerment. And I also liked that you have the awareness. Now this is one thing which is very important, Vikram, that there are a lot of times when it's easy to just tell the other generation that you don't understand Gen X, you don't understand Gen YZ. Yes, it's also important for Gen X and Gen YZ, Gen X, YZ, and everybody else, ABC, to understand that even the other generation that you're talking about who doesn't understand you also has a different context, which means you as a Gen Z also need to understand कि boss, हमारा context अलग है, but उनका context भी तो अलग है. So you need to respect that context, understand that context, and that is where patience comes in. You need to be
Absolutely.
patient around that. Understand what's happening. क्यों हो रहा है, क्या हो रहा है. अगर ये, if that person is not able to relate to me, if I'm not able to relate to him, what is that person's context? That's also a responsibility of you, coming from a different generation and not just of one generation. This brings in a point that Indrajit has mentioned. Patience and adaptability is most important. A very valid point.
Absolutely.
That patience, yes, and also adaptability. That you can't just be कि मैं ऐसा ही हूँ, तो every generation has to change according to Gen Z, or other generations can't be that Gen Z has to change to our ways. Both generations have to understand each other's context and adapt to it, saying that where do we find that middle ground where I create what you want, you create what I want, and we may build that synergy in between. And the last point, which was again very vital, was the whole thing of gratitude. That do I value what I have in hand? Just because I'm getting 6 lakhs here and 8 lakhs somewhere else, or 15 lakhs somewhere else, is that the only criteria for me to shift? Now,
Absolutely.
being grateful for what you have and not just looking at a job as a compensation, to understand what is the overall impact, what did this organization, this team, the people around you give you. Do you value that, or you just see that it's a jump for me to 6 to 8 to 15 to 30 to 50 to 1 CR? If that is all you see, then it's a very difficult road that you're taking for yourself, and you're also making it difficult for other people around you. So that awareness कि मेरे डिसीजन का मेरे पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, मेरे डिसीजन का मेरे सर्कल ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, is what Gen Z definitely needs to understand. So you brought out these 2 points, one of patience, and Indrajit shared the point of adaptability with us,
Yes.
and you brought out the point of gratitude. I think these are the 3 feedbacks that probably Gen Z needs to understand and imbibe in, saying that am I patient? Am I looking at the whole perspective, understanding everything? Am I grateful for my present while I'm running for my future? And am I adaptable? Am I also changing according to the context of the other generation, or am I only waiting and cribbing, saying that कि ये लोग मुझे नहीं समझ रहे, तुम भी तो उनको समझने की कोशिश करो, they also have a different context. So very, very powerful points brought out, Vikram. I think we had an amazing conversation. There is so much value in this. I think everybody from Gen A, B, C, D to Z should listen to this conversation, because the context that we have set is beyond generations. The content was specific to generations, but the context is beyond generation. It applies to anybody and everybody. So great. So we couple of comments that are coming our way is Pradeep Kumar says always follow basic principles. Employees first, customer next. Andrea says the perfect mix, presential and home working. So perfect mix between the present and home working. So great point there. So thank you for your comments, and thank you, Vikram, for bringing in such amazing pointers about what we wanted to bring forward as a message to Gen Z and a message from Gen Z. So I think we have covered both, to and from both, and wish you all the best in everything that you are doing. Amazing things. I'll keep following you. Anything that you need, I'm always there. Any last points, anything that you want to share before we close today's conversation?
Prashant, I think more than anything, I just want to conclude this on one point that I'll say that leadership from here on, it's going to be about a shared partnership rather than anything else. So you just spoke about how we understand each other, how we spend time with the contexts we are coming from. So it's more about the shared partnership, and it's being going to be about the empathetic negotiation of give and take, characterized by proper communication, offering a mutual nourishing feedback at every stage, and creating a space where everyone gets to explore and organize their ideas and experiences. I think that is the space that we should be chasing for, and hence we should be in a position to create enough safety and structure within ourselves so that we can show that up to the outer environment and get our needs met without compromising on anything. So I think I had a very nice conversation with you, Prashant. This platform has been really nice to me. I'm indebted to you for this opportunity that you thought that I can bring forward my views and everything on this platform.
You're
So
welcome. You're
thank you
welcome.
so much,
Always.
Prashant. And that goes without saying, we'll stay in touch. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to follow you for more leadership insights, and for all the leadership insights and all the practical knowledge that I can get from you. And I'm going to text you and bug you if I get stuck somewhere, because I know you are going to help me
Absolutely.
from that perspective of the corporate side.
I
Thank you so
sure
much,
will,
Prashant.
Vikram,
Thank
and
you.
you're welcome always. You brought an amazing value, Vikram, and you brought forward that essence, that soul of the show, which I talk about little things about leadership that matter the most, and we spoke about little small things that are expected from different generations and from leadership. So thank you so much for bringing in great value. Be who you are, keep growing, keep empowering, and keep serving. And thank you to audience. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being patient, and I'm sure there's a lot of value that you've gotten from this conversation. So please put your comments. If you're watching it in recording, still put your comments out there later. Vikram and I will come back to those comments. There is a lot that we want to learn. As much as we are looking to add value, there's also a lot that we are learning. We are changing as people. We are also becoming better people so that we can serve more. So thank you so much for everything, and I'll see you on next Saturday once again at 11 a.m. with another amazing guest who will bring up few more perspectives, few more aspects of leadership, and we'll continue to serve on this mission. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you, Vikram. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.